Hello and welcome to training for the Embrace web portal login. Today I'm going to be showing you some different things that you can do as a user with your phone through the web portal. So the first thing you want to do is go to pbx.slappy.com. And when you type that into your web portal, and as we always recommend Chrome for everything to work correct, you'll see this screen right here. Your login name will always be your extension, either 3 or 4 digits, at the domain name that's provided. If you don't know this information, feel free to ask a Slappy technician or submit in a ticket or work order, and someone can help you find this information. And then your password will be what you have set up before. If you've never set up a username, you can click the forgot login name or forgot password here at the bottom. And as long as your email is on file, it will send you an email for you to reset this information. So I'm going to assume that you do have your login name and your password. And when you hit this login button, you'll be taken to your account page. So if you see here at the top, these big kind of squarish buttons running from home, messages, fax, contacts, conferencing, answering rules, timeframes, phones, music on hold, and call history. These are the main sections that we're going to be covering today. And under each section, there are some separate tabs that you'll be looking into, and you can kind of see this big blue bar right here will kind of help you see the difference. So if I switch over here to messages, you see how under this blue bar I got voicemail, chat, and settings. These are the kind of sub tabs of messages. But let's start here at the beginning and kind of work our way over. So when you first log in, you'll see a couple boxes of information. This first one here at the top left would be your voicemail messages, and they're going to be automatically in order from newest to oldest. So the from is going to be the digits that it came from. So like you can see, Don left me a voicemail here on the 16th at 10:16, and I can see his extension listed here. And I can even click it to call. You see that right there. But then like Jeff Jones, this is from an outside number. And then this next column is going to be the caller ID that it picks up. So this came from a cell phone. That's why it called wireless caller. This came from North River IT. This came from James Lansford. Kind of similar to how your voicemail looks if you've logged into your phone. Then right here on the right side, every voicemail is going to have these 5 different options. So if you hit the call to play button, what that does is it rings all your devices. So your desk phone, if you have the app on your cell phone, it'll ring that. So if you don't have speakers on your computer and you want to hear the voicemail, you can hit the call to play button and it'll actually call you and play it on your phone. The forward function is if I want to send this voicemail to another extension. So let's say a customer left me a voicemail and I need someone else to listen to it because they need to help me with it, or maybe it was intended for a different person. That's where we're going to hit the forward button, and then you see enter a user information. So what's nice about this system that I'll go ahead and mention is like if I know, let's say James's extension by heart, I can type that in. But let's say I can't remember James's extension. I can actually just type James's name, and you see how it searches for it? And then when I click on it, it'll actually put his name in there, and then I'll hit this forward button, and now James has a copy of that voicemail message. This third one is we'll download the actual file to my computer. So if I click that, it actually will see down here at the bottom of my Chrome, and it may be a little small, but it actually would download the voicemail to my computer for if I wanted to save it. This next button is transcription. So if I click on this, it's going to open it up and actually show me the transcription. You're probably already getting your voicemail to email with the attached file and the transcription, but this is just another place for if you needed to go find it quickly, depending upon if the email is old or got deleted. And then this last one, or next to last one, is the save button. If you want to kind of put it to a safe place, hey, this is information I want to get to later. I just want to save it. And then the last one is delete. I actually already helped Don with this issue, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that voicemail. And if you had your phone in front of you, you would see that update in about 30 seconds to a minute where your number on your new messages on your phone would decrease. Then right below the new voicemail little box right here, you've got recent call history. Kind of same thing as the voicemail. It's going to show from the newest to the oldest the phone calls that I've been making or receiving. And you can see right here how this has like a little green phone with the pointing outward. That would be an outbound call. I don't actually have any inbound calls in here right now, but what that would be a blue phone with, you see this little arrow? It'd be pointing in. And then a red phone with an X would mean it's a missed call. And then I can see here the date and the duration of that phone call. Then up here on the top right, kind of going back up the page, you can see active answering rule. And right now I'm on my default answering rule, and most of you are probably on this already. And you can see with this active answering rule enabled, it's ringing all of my different phones. So this is my main desk phone. This is a test phone. And then the M is typically what's used on your soft phone. And then it actually rings out to my cell phone as well. And then you can see down here, I got 2 phones registered, my Yealink 58 and then the app that we have. So this is the main homepage, kind of gives you a quick glance at the things you may need to see, like voicemails, call history, and then, hey, how are my calls being handled? We'll get into a little bit later on how to change these different ones, but you can see right here that I could set up I'm in a meeting. So if I change that, you see how it's just going to forward all my calls to Derek, or I have one that's called call forward that just sends all my calls to James. So I will show you in a second how to update that, but this is just a kind of a quick overview on your homepage of what that looks like. So moving over to messages. And there's really 2 kind of messages that you will have in this system. So the first one is the one that everyone's pretty accustomed to, which is voicemails. And you can see here it's more expanded version of what you saw there on the home page. So here's the transcriptions already kind of expanded for you. And again, you can see that by default, they're listed, by just the new ones. And they're in the chronological order. And then down here at the bottom, you see you got view 15 on a page, 25 on a page, 50 on a page, or 100, and then 1 or 2 pages. So right now I have more than 15 voicemails, and that's why it's on 2 pages. So if I expand this to 100 voicemails per page, you see how the pages go away at the bottom. So if you have a lot of voicemails you're trying to go through quickly, then you can scroll all the way down here to the bottom and click 100 to expand the view. This right here at the top under the voicemail where it says new, saved would be voicemails that you've saved for later that you want to get to. And then trash would be voicemails that get emptied on a daily basis. And you can see that right here with this blue bar. It tells you this trash is emptied daily. So even though I just trashed this voicemail from Don earlier, then you can see that by the start of tomorrow, that's going to be completely gone. So if you accidentally deleted a voicemail and you want to get it back quickly, as long as it's done in the same day, you can go and recover it. So the next type of messaging that you can do is actually with text messaging and internal chat. So if you're in this section and you hit new conversation, you can see it pops up a little new chat window here. You can also start a new conversation when you're anywhere, as long as you click the little contact bar here at the bottom right. I'll do that again. I don't know if you can see where my mouse is, but it's this little grayish black bar. And then you can see that I have actually a status set. And then right here, I have the ability to start a video call or a conversation or make a call. If I click the middle one with the chat icon, it opens up the same window if I click this. So if I wanted to internally message someone, so I'll pick on James, I can go ahead and just say, hey, James, that's an internal chat. The reason I know that is because I can see right here, it's sending it to 1243. And James is very responsive on that. Thanks, James. But let's say you want to text someone externally. How would you do that? Well, it's actually quite simple. In the same box right here, you see where it says search for contacts? I'm actually going to send James a text message real quick. I'm going to type in his cell phone number. And you can see right here, after I typed all 10 digits, it recognizes it as this outside number, and it gives me the option to send SMS. Now, when I do that, I can say, hey, James, this is Wes on the SMS, and all SMS means is text message. While I'm waiting for him to respond, I just want to notate, you see down here, it says sending SMS using, and then it has my actual DID listed, 205-439-4136. That means that it's sending an SMS message from that, and James is responding to that. So this whole section right here that I showed you under messages and chat and SMS, if I update it, is actually going to show you your whole chat history. And if you can see the difference right here, this little icon that has this like dark chat bubble, this is an internal chat that I was having with James. And if I click on it, I can see the history of it. If I click this view all button to go back, this right here is a texting conversation that I had with James. And then the last thing to look under messages is your settings. So the thing that I would play with or mess with under your settings is pretty much only one thing, and that is your greetings. If you go down here to the unified messaging and start playing with this without talking with a technician, you may end up not getting your voicemails to your email correctly. So I would be very careful with playing with this. But the thing that's really nice about this system is if you want to change your voicemail greeting or your recorded name, you can easily do that from the web portal. So your recorded name is going to be pretty much static. You know, mine would be Wesley Slappy, and that's you only need to record that once. Maybe you want to change it every couple of years. You know, if your voice gets different, I don't know. But as far as the voicemail greetings go, you can actually have up to 10 different ones stored, and you can see that. You see where it says one-Wesley default, and that one's selected. If I want to add more to this list, I can actually click this manage button right here on the far right. So you can see the play button, which would play me the voicemail greeting. This would actually just download it if I wanted to save it. And then this manage button opens up this whole new prompt. And right here at the bottom right, you see where it says add greeting or done. If I hit add greeting, I can now add an additional greeting. So if I have it on the default upload, I can actually just upload a sound file if I wanted to. Anything that I wanted. And I'm actually going to take that voicemail that Don sent me and see if it'll let me upgrade it. I'm going to say test. And if I click upload, let's see if it goes. There you go. So now I have this option 2. And if I come back out of that, you see how I have this list here, I can switch it. So why would you want to do this? Well, by default, my voicemail is pretty generic. Thanks for calling me, you know, leave a voicemail, that kind of thing. Let's say you want to have one for a temporary. Hey, I'm out of the office until the 30th. And you just want to temporarily change it. But when you get back, you want to change it to your default. You could easily go in there and add a temporary. Or potentially, if you really want to get creative, you could go ahead and pre-record a couple of them. And then just when you go out of town or you're doing something that you want to, you know, make your voicemail sound different, you could have those there managed. So if I click that manage button again, and I'll do that real quick, that little kind of speaker on the far right, I can now manage these. And you can see that I can actually download or edit these. So like editing would mean I could replace it with another file. Download just saves the file. And then the delete button just gets rid of it. So there's another way to upload recordings, or what I say record. So the second little radio button right here, record, now will call you to record this. So by default, it's going to call my extension. And just, I don't know if I said this earlier, but I'll say it here again. You have to always name your greeting. But here's a little trick. Let's say that I'm not near my desk phone. I'm working out of the office. You can actually put any 10-digit number you want to put here. So I could actually type my cell phone number in and hit call, and I'll let you see if you can hear it. It'll actually call me.
Start recording after the tone. Press pound when you are finished.
Hello, this is a test.
Thank you.
So it will call you and actually let you record it off of any device that you can put a 10-digit call number on. And then if I come in here and come back to manage, you see how it's now in there recorded? So it makes it real easy for you to come and manage your voicemail greetings. Like I said, I'm not really going to talk about too many of these settings because these are going to be set up by your technicians. And if you potentially start messing with these, you may disable some of the features that you're used to. And then I'm just going to click this save button here at the bottom to make sure everything's okay. So let's talk about contacts. So by default, all the contacts that are listed here would be contacts that are in our organization. So if a user has been set up on the system and given an extension, unless someone has explicitly listed them not to be in the directory, they're going to be here. So when a technician is setting up a system, they may choose, like with some things that we're doing in the backgrounds, not to show contacts. Those won't show up here. But every user should show up here for you. And you can kind of see here at the top where I click the all button, I can do some different sorting between like departments, sites, coworkers, my contacts, shared, or favorites. And then you can kind of see here, I got green statuses for some users and then green without the blue dot. The blue just means that they're probably logged into the web portal and available to chat, versus no blue dot means they're not logged into the web portal. And then you can see down here, like Derek and Eric are both red. This means that they are on the phone or busy with something else. So you can easily search for someone in here and find them. But let's say this is an outside contact. You probably see that I got, like Kirk and Dave and these outside phone numbers. So we do have the ability, if it's set into a technician, to add system-wide shared contacts. So if there's 30 people outside of the phone system that are consistently being called, in order for it to be in everybody's contact book, it needs to be uploaded at a top level. But if you have a contact that's specific to you, that you're either texting a lot or calling a lot, you can click this right up here at the top right under the blue bar, this add contact button, and fill in their information. And if you want to get creative enough with it and potentially have someone help you, you could do a mass import from a CSV file to import or export your contacts into here. Let me just reiterate, if you import a list of contacts in this view, you're the only person that's going to be able to see them. All right, so let's move on to the next section, which is conference. And this is a personal conference bridge. So this does not come set up by default unless requested. So if you want this set up, you'll need to request it. By default, we do set up some if we're working with the project coordinator and it is requested. But once this is set up, it will show up here. And what this is going to be is that conference bridge number with the PIN that you set up that people come into your personal conference. And what will happen when people join this conference is that their name and their number and all that will show up here. And I'm actually going to see if James, I'm going to put him on the spot, can call into that real quick. And I'm going to show you what you can do with that user. And then I'm also going to call into it as well and show you what it looks like. All right, so you can see that I called in here from my cell phone number and it pops up as status is active and the duration of it. And as soon as James gets in here, we'll see him call in here. So this is in real time who is active in a conference. But let me show you something real quick while I'm waiting on James to get added in. Here at the top left, you see where it says enter a number to add participant. So let's say that someone isn't able to find the conference information, or maybe this is an ad hoc on the fly thing. You need to add someone to the conference. You could actually add someone by extension number in here and it would call them and add them to the conference, or you could dial their 10-digit number. So if I dialed a number like that and hit add, and actually looks like Will's joining in too. So you could actually hit this number and have it call into someone. So it looks like James actually didn't call in. So what I'm going to do here is just ring James real quick and hit this plus button right here. And you can see that it's calling him and he actually just joined. So that's a really nice feature if you say you're trying to add someone to a conference that wasn't planned or they can't find the information. And then right here, you can see the duration that they've been here. And then on the right here, you see the manage settings. So let's say that someone, had a dog that was barking in the background, or maybe something else where you need to mute their sound. You can easily hit this mute and you can see their status change to muted, or hit the button again to unmute them. Or maybe someone's joined the conference or forgot the left that doesn't need to be there. I can just click this disconnect button and it kicks them out of the conference completely. And then now I can see that only these people are left in the conference. Another nice feature is, let's say you had a conference call and you wanted in the past and you want to look at what happened. If you hit this report button right here, you can see that this conference call that we had today at 11:26, it was only 2 minutes long about, and it had 3 participants. And I can see everyone that called in, how they were connected. So if they called in themselves or I had to call them outbound, and how long they were in the conference for. So that could be nice if you need to go back and look, hey, who was actually on that conference and what were they doing? All right, now moving over to the answering rules. And let me, before I click there, I want to kind of pop back over to here. You remember these active answering rules we talked about earlier? The default, call forward, and meeting. This is where those are modified. But before we talk about that, we're going to talk about timeframes. And the reason why is that answering rules have to be tied to timeframes. The reason why is that you probably have potentially a day and night mode. And so you have what are called timeframes that basically define when you want something active. So you see when I have an add a time frame here, I get to name it. And you can name it whatever you want to name it that's specific to you. But then you can see the down here where it says always days of the week and times or specific date range. So a specific date range would be very specific to, let's say I was going out of town from the 25th to the 30th. I could create a time frame and apply an answering rule that once that timeline expires, automatically rolls back to my default or the next in my list. Let me also add one thing to this. You see right here where it says owner and then shared, but then down here it lists 1136, which is my extension. And then this one's actually blue. And actually you see how these don't have icons, but this actually has an edit and delete button. That's because, like with your contacts, there are some that can be created at a top level and then some that can be created at a specific user level. So if by default, we will go ahead and create some top level timeframes. And you can kind of see some in here like Slappy after hours, Slappy business hours that are automatically timeframes that are created. But if you want to create additional timeframes for you to do some different kind of call routing with, you can add them. But the thing is, if you're going to help someone else potentially with this, those timeframes that you created for yourself won't show up for them because they were only made by you. So if you create a time frame and you want it created for everyone in the organization because you think it would be helpful, then you will need to put in a ticket or work order with a technician to get that created. So let's create a time frame, and I got one here called meeting and call forward. Let's create one that, I'm going to say doing a demo. So if I'm doing a demo and I want this active always, because sometimes I do demos after hours, like 5 or 6 at night. And the reason I'm selecting always is that I always want this to be in effect. And I'm just going to click save. So now that time frame has been created, I can go back to an answering rule and hit add rule. And the first thing it asked me, and this is why we talked about the time frames first, is that I now have to apply a time frame to this answering rule. So I'm going to select the time frame doing a demo. I'm going to make sure it's enabled. And now I got a couple options down here. So if I select do not disturb, you're going to see that this stuff grays out. And what that basically does is just drop anyone that calls directly into my voicemail. I actually don't want that. Call screening is another kind of cool feature to use if you're calling out to your cell phone. What this will do is call you and ask you, do you want to accept the call? So potentially if you're having calls come, maybe you create a call rule where you're like at the doctor and you want to do call screening, meaning you're sitting in the waiting room, you get a phone call, you can see that it's coming from your DID. So you answer it and it can tell you, it's some random number calling you, like, no, I don't need to answer that, compared to maybe your boss is calling you or someone really important is calling you. Call screening will let you enact that. So then down here, you've got some different options. Always is exactly what it says. So no matter what happens, just always send all my calls here. And again, that can be in an internal extension or an outside number. And like I mentioned, let's say I don't remember someone's extension. I can start typing their name in and you see how it finds someone to put in there. Busy means that if you're on a phone call, so you're already connected, if you remember the red status, that means that if you're on the phone and someone calls you and it sees that you're busy on the phone, it's going to send that call to this destination, which is a little bit different than unanswered, because unanswered is kind of similar to do not disturb in a sense, but instead of sending it to your voicemail, it will send it somewhere else. So it will do the full ring amount, which by default is 25 seconds or 5 rings. And instead of sending to your voicemail, it would send to the destination you want to send. And then the fourth one right here, which is went offline, that means that your phone or your soft phone can't connect to the phone system. So if you want what we kind of call automatic call forwarding, because maybe the power is out, maybe your internet's out, or your phone's just having a problem for whatever reason, you can have it automatically call forward somewhere. And that can be an internal or an external number. By default though, I'm not going to go ahead and just say do not disturb for doing a demo, which means it's just going to send them to a voicemail. And I'm actually going to pop over here to my default active answering rule to show you this last one. So by default, if someone calls me, it's going to come in and it's going to ring my extension and ring all my phones. And then you can see right here, it's going to send out to these 2 test phones right here. And you see this little plus button I have right here? I can add up to about 15 of these if I want to. And then if you remember this call screening, this right here, answer confirmation for off-net numbers, this has to be checked in order to enable that feature all the way through. So you can see this little list right here, and I know that's a lot of information, so kind of hold with me, but you can see that this list right here is kind of pretend that there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you see right here, it says blue active. That means that whatever's at the top of the list, that the conditions are met, it will use. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. So if I had one that was business hours and not business hours, as soon as it's not business hours, even though it's at the top of the list, it's no longer active because the conditions aren't met, and it will go down the list from 1 to 2. But because all of these answering rules are in what I call always, so if you remember over here when we were creating a time frame, there was the always versus the days and times of the week, and you can kind of see these little sliders that let you define that. These will never change to active unless I physically drag it to the top. And then you can see you've reprioritized your answering rules, click the save button, and now you see how doing a demo is now active. So if it's an always answering rule and it's at the top, then it will always be in effect unless you put a time frame on there to tell it not to be in effect. And if I jump back over here to my home screen, you see how when I switch it to doing a demo and I go back to my answering rules, it's now at the top of my list automatically. And same thing if I come back over here and change it back to default, it moves it back down the list. So that's an easy, quick way to log in to your home screen and easily change these without having to come all the way over here, drag it up, and then click save. But both work, not a problem at all. So that's the cool stuff that you can do with answering rules and timeframes. And I know that was a lot, but what I encourage you to do is to kind of go in there and play with it. But what I'm going to say is if it's not working, don't mess with your default answering rule because that one's set up and working. And at worst case scenario, just drag it back up to the top, hit save, put it back, and then put in a ticket for someone to help you set this up if you can't get it to work. So let's move on to the phone section. So the phone section is actually a really cool feature that lets you play with the buttons on your phone. So if you come in here, I've got a couple of different extensions, and this is not what your average user is going to look like. Honestly, what your phone is going to look like is probably 1 and 2. Your default extension up here at the top with your Yealink phone, and then your mobile extension down here. So if I follow this line all the way over, and by the way, before I go on, you see how it's green and registered? That means that it's up and working. Compared to the red one means it's unregistered, which means it can't contact the phone system. So if I follow this line all the way over, I've got 3 buttons. I'm going to tell you right now, be very careful. If you click any button here wrong, it could mess up the way that your phone works. The button you're going to click is this little gear wheel, and you see how it says Phone Builder? I'm going to click on that, and it's going to say Edit Button Configuration for this phone, and we're going to click Yes. And then what this does is it comes into this phone builder. And my phone looks a little bit different. and probably some of yours. But what it's going to have are these little buttons, and I'll switch to a different phone in a second. But what I'm going to tell you is, unless you know what you're doing, don't mess with buttons that have already been created unless you created them. So you don't want to mess with your line appearance keys or potentially any of these BLF keys that are set up. But what I can do is actually click on a button right here, and it actually jumps me down the list to where that button is. Or I can click on it and you see how it updates on the left. And if I select a feature, I can put a button there. The most common feature and the one that I'm going to only kind of recommend to most users is user BLF. All that is if you want to put a quick call button to a local user, you click user BLF, and then again, you can either type in their extension and select them, or if you don't remember their extension, search for them. And then come down here where it says save, click the up arrow and hit save and resync. And what that's going to do is push an update out to your phone and update your screen. The other thing that you could do is come down to speed dial and then type in a phone number for it to call. And the thing is, it doesn't know who this number belongs to. So you see on the right here where it says custom label, and I could say my cell. So if I click that button on my phone, it will quickly call out to the cell. So if I kind of go back into, let me see if I could find a different phone for us to play with, just so you can kind of see what it looks like. So like you see, this is that phone, and it's got these 3 buttons right here, and then these 3. So these are all programmed, but you see here at the bottom, it says this button will scroll between pages, and then I got this next page button, and then this next page. So I got 3 pages of buttons that I can program. And again, if you want to reprogram a button, you click on it, and then you can go in and change the setting. So another thing is that by default, your company is going to have system-wide on-hold music. But let's say you want to change your personal on-hold music. Well, that's real easy. You come in here to the music on hold, hit add music, and upload the song. And then it's in there. And then if anyone calls your extension, you put them on hold, it will play. Let me note though, by doing this, you're taking liability of the music you're uploading. So if you don't have permissions or the right to play like a copyrighted publicly owned song, then you could hold some liability to that. So I don't recommend uploading anything unless you know that it's royalty free or you own it or have permission documented to use that. And then the last thing, and kind of going back to the home screen here, you see all the call history that we have right here listed? Well, this is a more detailed view of this, and this is actually where you listen to your calls that are recorded. So by default, all your calls are recorded, extension, and outbound and inbound, and then they're stored here. And similar to the way the voicemails work, you see here by default it has 15 listed. Well, if I click the 100 button here, it expands it out. Now I got 100 per page, so it may be a little bit easier to navigate. And if you remember how I was telling you the blues versus the green versus the red, so the green with the arrow out is an outbound call, the blue with an N is an inbound call, and then this red with an X is a missed call. And you can actually see a different icon for the conferences here that I forgot to mention. So similar kind of thing that you can do with your voicemails over here. So you could edit the contact that it's assigned to. You could download the call that's recorded, or if you click this little speaker button, you can actually listen to that call and what was said. And if I come down here to like a number, you see that I don't have in my system, the 778-1690. This is actually a test I was doing the other day. You see, instead of edit contact, it's add to contact. If I click that, and I can either add it to an existing or create new contact, this should be very familiar to a lot of you if you're using your cell phone, like if you go to create a contact with a call history. And I actually know what this is. This is a test number Wes. And it automatically enters the phone number in. And now when I click save, it's in my contacts. And I'm going to come back to call history and hit refresh. It may take it a second to update. There it goes. You see how now it says test number Wes work? So if someone's calling you and you know who they are, just because caller ID isn't showing up doesn't mean you can't add them to your contacts. So that's pretty much it. as far as how to use the portal, there's two more things that I'm going to show you real quick that you can do through the web portal. And these are more ways to use the system than to manage it. So I'm going to pull this over here real quick. And actually just got a text message here from Will. What I'm going to show you are two things. So you're not going to have this manage domain button because that's what admins have. But what you are going to have are these three kind of buttons right here. Your profile goes over into your profile and some information on how to, if you want to change your password or your PIN. But again, I wouldn't mess with those unless someone directs you to. But you have these two buttons up here, Attendant Console and Launch Web Phone. So we're going to start with the web phone first. So what this is right here is a soft phone, and the way it looks like this is because I got it blown up for you. So let me refresh it real quick. But this right here is very similar to the app that you use on your cell phone. And you can see right here by default, it's got contacts kind of listed here on this tab. And then here are the voicemails, here are my call history, and then here are my messages. So this is the same information that's from your phone that's synced over here. And then down here at the bottom right, you got this red button that if you click, you got a pencil to do a new conversation or new text, or this little like dial pad looking thing says all these dots actually bring up this dial pad for you to make a phone call. So you can actually make and receive phone calls from this if you have like a USB headset plugged up to your computer, or most of you probably have like some sort of webcam these days with speakers. You can just use the built-in stuff to make phone calls from your computer if this is launched. So if I dial my DID real quick, I'm going to show you what it kind of looks like. You see how it shows up as incoming call and it right there, and I can hit answer, ignore, or reject. And then if I accept the call, I've got the phone number, I got transfer, I can add a call if I want to, in a sense, do a conference. I could start recording the call, but by default, they're already recording. Or if I hit this, I could hit hold, or I could switch the phone. So if I wanted it to ring to my desk phone, you see how it's now listed here, the Yealink phone. It will now push the call from here to my desk phone. And then to hang up this call, you just hit this red button. The other thing to notice from here, you can actually change your status. So these three bars to the top left, you can hit that and then go to answering rules. And then you see how it's on default right now. I can actually drag up doing a demo, and now doing a demo is my default answering rule. So this may be kind of useful to use on your cell phone if you have this app there. Calling people, you just click on their name and then you can hit chat or call if you want to. Voicemail, when you click on them, you got the call button, the save voicemail, forward to voicemail, or delete, or the play button. And under the call history, all you can do is just look at the call, and then you can actually send or call them. You can't listen to the calls here. So then the other thing that you have is the attendant console. And what this is, and I'm actually going to reopen that web phone. What this is a feature that can actually work with any of your phones you're using. So it doesn't have to be this web phone right here, and it doesn't have to be just your desk phone or other cell phones. So any extension that's tied to you can be used with this. And what this is just kind of like a call director. So if you're on a call and you need to move it somewhere quick, this is something that you can use to do that. And I'm going to show you real quick how that works. So I'm going to call my extension again. You can see it's kind of showing up in both places. If I hit answer here by default, it's going to answer on my desk phone, but I'm going to answer it here because that's where the call is. So you can see right here, the call shows up here as active, and I got buttons right here that I can either end, park, transfer, hold, or I have this little grid here where I can actually drag it. And then in the middle, I've got all these contacts that are listed. And I'm actually going to expand this so it looks a little better. And then I can search. So let's say I wanted to send this call to James. I can just type his name out and I found him right here. Or if I want to send it to Will or Leslie or Tim, I can easily just search in this bar right here and find a user I want to send it to. So what happens when I want to send this to, say, Will right here? Well, I can either drag it over here and let go, or I can hit this transfer button and then click on his name, and it's going to ask me, do you want to transfer, which is what we call a blind transfer. It just goes to him. The call's directly connected, nothing happens. Assisted transfer means I have an opportunity to introduce it to him, where I can say, hey, well, so and so's on the phone, they need to talk to you, or I just want to drop it to his voicemail. So if I just hit this voicemail button, it's going to go right into Will's voicemail.
Please leave a message after the tone.
So it went directly to his voicemail. So the other things that you can do with that call is you see the parking spots over here. You could drag them to a parking spots. If you see the tabs up here, let's say I want to drop them into, a test, into one of these like help desks, or if they need to go to an auto attendant, like, hey, I just want to go and, I need to go talk to someone, or I don't know, depending on how an auto attendant's used, like a dial by name directory, or maybe there's some sort of prompt in there. You can move these calls to anything that you want to. All right. Well, that wraps up the training that I had kind of set up for today. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.